So we've been down here before. I mean, on the Matthew Brady Century Farm, looking over his forestry operation, and he's got sheep and he raises wheat. And maybe you already know that because, like I said, we've been here before, but we've never been here before with Buckin Billy Ray Smith on the deck. Those two guys are most of a generation apart, but mostly overlapping on interest in timber and tools and lumber and everything related to what happens in the Pacific Northwest. But we're going to get Buckin close to a small portable sawmill with a big Detroit 471 diesel on it for the first time that I've seen this sawmill with plenty of power get run into a piece of second growth fir. This is a great morning, but we got to get it done before the sun gets too far up because it is fire season and we don't want to take any chances. This mill was set up in a field up there by Glide. Belonged to my wife's granddad, and it was 80 feet long and 40 feet wide, and it was run with a Dodge. Front end of a Dodge car was over there. Instead of that V-shiv, there was a 38-inch flat belt shiv. This arbor was not 5 feet long, it was 10 feet long.
Yes.
The drive shaft, the jack shaft off the back of the motor was 18-inch, and there was a 40-foot flat belt running it, and it was all rotted down in a heap. And then I tore it all apart, moved all the pieces to a friend's shop and bought 600 feet of channel iron and 2 mobile home axles and started welding.
So you're just putting a fresh edge on it.
Boy, that's a slick jig, Matthew.
Look at that.
A diamond file. These are chrome inlay bits and they're hard.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good way to ruin a regular mill bastard file.
If it's not square, the saw runs to the long side of the tooth.
Yes. Yes. A beast of a man living his dream. Working the family farm.
Taking a chance every day.
So, if I'm not mistaken, the circular, they cut like this, don't they? Not straight.
No, these are straight.
They are straight.
It's just straight through, filling the gullet and throwing it out. There's no offset.
Yeah.
The buzz saws had that.
Okay.
Yeah, see, there's no set. There's just clearance.
That's why the torque is very much needed.
You gotta have power, maybe.
Yeah.
Because you're just pulling chunks of wood out.
Yeah.
The sawdust, we'll go look at it in a second,
Yeah.
Buckin. The sawdust is different than most sawdust you see for that reason.
Yeah, well, it would be.
Yeah. And something I didn't know when I was trying to fight this into submission, your gullets need to be sharp. Because if the gullets get worn on one edge, the sawdust will bleed out in there and be trapped between the saw and the wood
sitting on
and
there.
make heat.
Very interesting.
You gonna put water on it or no?
No.
The saw is not set parallel to the course of the carriage, like on a table saw in my wood shop. It's towed in a little. It's called lead.
Okay.
You got to have a little. But if you don't have enough, you don't have enough, and if you have too much, you have too much.
Right.
And so the first year and a half he was fighting this, he didn't have enough.
Explain the lead to me again.
It's this, that the leading edge of the saw is closer to the track than the back edge. The saw it's not enough that you can see.
Interesting.
Just a little. And so, like maybe
Like 3/16 of an inch or something front to back.
Okay.
across the whole saw, so like 3/32 from the eye to here,
Yes.
so that the saw is making contact with the log,
Yep.
and as the log goes by, there's a little clearance right here between the face and the saw.
Makes sense.
Okay, and so you're not getting the friction on the log, which is immovable.
Yes.
You're getting a little friction on the slab or the board, which will push out of the way,
Yes.
and it reduces the heat gain
Yep.
as it goes through. An example of God having a hand in this. So I'm 21 and I'm designing this and I'm making drawings on a yellow pad and I'm how far and what size channel iron and okay, and I'll put the axles under here like this. And then I built this husk. The frame that holds the saw is called the husk.
Yes.
And that's built separate from the mill. See, it bolts on right here. Okay, in 4 places. And so I shrink this feed works and I reconfigure the shivs and I set it on there in my friend's field. And then I look down here and I think, holy smokes, have I got room here for that? Well, it turns out we've got about 7/8 of an inch.
You're kidding.
And then if we get that in there, I think, oh my gosh, I got to set the saw in here. Have I got room for the saw? And I set the saw in, and there was about 1/2 inch of clearance right here between the edge of that cross piece and the saw. And there's about 1.25 inches of clearance right here between the saw and the drive shaft.
So, just
That I didn't have brains enough in my head to anticipate when I was building it. That right there and that right there. And so what we learn from this is God has a sense of humor.
Yes. We talked about that.
Yeah.
He sure does.
Yeah.
And this is basically just safety guardage.
It's just a rail. It's just something
a
to get your
rail
hand
to
on.
maneuver and get around.
And it nearly killed me one time because I was sick of the sawdust coming up in a rooster tail and going down the back of my neck. I didn't have enough lead either. And so I had a board. I laid a board on here, and I was in a hurry. I didn't have a bolt. I thought, well, so I just drove some 16-penny nails into the bottom of the board and clinched them around this, just bent them over.
Yep.
What could go wrong, right? Sawed along, and it made a nice little roof so the sawdust didn't come up. And I threw a pistol-butted little pole on here in Wyoming, sawing by myself. It came out pistol-butted hard to the left, you know. So when I ran the slab in, the slab was about this thick where it went in, and then tapered down to nothing. Making sense? So I run the slab by there, and it gets out to the end, and I raise the handle back up the carriage. I'm standing right here, and I hear this whack! And that heavy pistol butt dropped off the end of that roll case, and the light end of the slab came up hard and hit the end of that 1x8 and knocked the end of the 1x8 off, and it rolled down onto the saw, which is going 10,000 feet per minute. So suddenly that 1x8 goes, boom, like, right there.
Wow.
Anyhow, all that.
And you blissfully, daftily just kind of went, thanks.
I jumped off, shut off the motor.
Yeah.
Gave thanks I was still alive.
That's right.
And started it back up.
You've got to be kidding me. Oh, man.
That's a beautiful sound, man.
The screaming the Jimmy, yeah. Listen.
Matthew's experience resurrecting this sawmill has been radically different than mine was for a couple of reasons. One, he's able to start with a mill that's already put together. And two, the internet has provided access to lots of information. In addition to that, there are books that are published and findable now, you know, with all of the online booksellers that hold the information that was hard-won as circular mills were beginning to develop and become important to the lumber industry and to the whole world. But I flatter myself when I think that maybe I have been a little helpful too, even though my experience was a blood and guts, figure it out for yourself and take your chances sort of a thing. I did figure some things out, and boy is it fun being able to share them with an ambitious, intelligent, hardworking young man with enough resources to make it happen, enough intelligence to understand what's being told him and then take it to the next level, and enough humility to pause and consider for just a minute that maybe an old man does know something. So let me say just a couple things about having Buckin Billy Ray Smith down here with me this morning to Matthew's place. I met Buckin a year ago up at his place in Vancouver. We had done a podcast with him maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and so I was aware of him and what a unique and effective and hard-charging man he is. But to have him down here in my stomping grounds, working in my shop, and then bring him down and letting him get a look at this sawmill has just, it feels like it has given us a head start on a friendship that would have been strong had we grown up in the same neighborhood. because there are kindred spirits that you meet from time to time if you're lucky. And I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of them. And if you haven't run across Buckin Billy Ray already on YouTube, you're going to want to take a look at his channel. You'll hear a little more about that at the end of this video. But I got to tell you, I don't know if he and I would have gotten into more trouble or gotten more work done or a little bit of both if we'd run into each other when we were 20 years old. After we cut up 2 or 3 logs with the new power plant, Matthew grabbed a saw blade that he picked up in Portland about a month ago. Actually, he picked up 3 used saw blades. And it's taken a chance to buy a used circular saw blade because you don't know what kind of condition it's in until you put it on an arbor and make it spin. So he had pulled the shanks out, oiled it up, and brushed off the rust, and he was excited to put it in there now that we knew he had plenty of power, and so we did it. And it was fun. It was interesting. Buckin liked to see how this stuff all goes together. The blade looked good, but I'll tell you what, it did not cut near as good as that old blade that Sam Ball gave me, that I ran for decades, and now Matthew's been running it for a few years. So he's got some more experimenting to do. Maybe take that new blade to a saw shop, see what kind of tension it has, see if it's hammered for a left hand or a right-handed mill, and then maybe bring it back as a spare or put it on, and maybe it'll be an improvement, but it definitely was not today. I don't know if you can tell or hear the difference between the way the saw is running in this log and the way the other blade was running in the first log we put on the deck, the big buckskin, which was the second cut of the same tree. It just doesn't have that same crisp, slicing an apple, hissing sound going through the wood. You can hear it laboring and rubbing. And boy, let me tell you, after we had cut this log down to a 3-sided cant and shut down and decided it wasn't working that great, the saw was hot enough you couldn't even keep your hand on it, which meant that there's just no way you could expect it to be standing up and cutting like the other blade was in the other log. I don't know, but I think that this second saw blade is hammered for a left-handed mill. Sometime we'll explain the difference, and I can guarantee you that at some point in the not-too-distant future, I'm going to be back down here helping Matthew troubleshoot this old beastie and having the time of my life while I'm doing it. So it's normal, right, that I come down here and I play with Matthew and he indulges me and lets me have a little fun. And then I say, well, gotta go, Matt, sorry. You're doing good. But that motor's a win, right? You're pleased with the motor.
Definitely so. So definitely picks up when you bog it down a little. And
you can tell there's all the power there you could use if you wanted to grab it.
It's there, definitely.
Yeah. I've known for a long time it needed a motor like this, and I could never do it, but this kid did. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the cleanliness of his installation. It's very sanitary. Makes my sawmill look a little rough.
Yeah, that's all right.
I only saw one trip there near the end. A couple edges there.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So Buckin, we're glad you came down here. I'm really glad you got to see this.
Just honored to be here. This has been a trip for me to see that. A Screaming Jimmy burning up old buckskins is always a blast for me. So
it is.
I appreciate being here.
Yep,
and you got to meet
down.
Paul Bunyan's great-great-great-grandson.
Well, I was going to mention something on that, but I'm a smarter man than that. Yeah.
And, you know, I had a fit of sanity and realized there may be some of you watching us right now who don't know this guy and have no idea how he got the sleeves ripped off his shirt.
That's impossible.
That couldn't have happened. It couldn't happen if you were Canadian, I can tell you that. This guy's from Vancouver Island. He's got a heck of a channel. If there's anything you want to learn about how to really think about running a power saw, I say chainsaw, he says power saw. He can tell you. If you want to know what it means to get the gullet and why you file deep when you're filing, you can tell him. If you want to know how to put a face cut and a back cut in and stay alive to tell the story, he can tell him, and a lot more. So check out his channel, Buckin Billy Ray Smith. It's been good to have you here,
brother.
That was
nice. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
I mean it.
And a pleasure meeting you, brother.
Nice. Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, very nice. Thank you.
So just one more reason to think about what it is you do and who you do it with and what you can learn from the people around you. It's a big deal. But in any case, thanks for watching Essential Craftsman. Keep up the good work.